And welcome to episode 74 of the DX Mentor, details about an upcoming IOTA DXPedition. I'm Bill, AJB. If this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. We have a back catalog covering many aspects of DX in both podcast and YouTube format. Please check us out. If you like what you find, subscribe, like, and share to always be notified about upcoming events. Another way to keep in touch and to see what we're up to is via the DX Mentor Facebook page. I will be posting about upcoming podcasts as well as other DX events, so please follow us. You can check the show notes for any of the information that we discussed today. A team composed of Cezar, VE3LYC, Felipe, XQ7IR, and Johan, PA3EXX, plans to activate Pajaros Rocks SA100 between August 18th and August 23rd. These rocks are located in the north of Chile, about 100 kilometers south of Iquique, in the vicinity of the fishermen's village of Caleta Lobos. One of these two rocks has a round shape with a diameter of just under 60 meters, while the second one is oval in shape, about 60 by 30 meters. Both rocks are very rugged, and landing can only be attempted by swimming to them and then pacing against the waves to get up on the rocks. They also have very steep slopes and host colonies of sealions and cormorants. Does this sound like fun or what? Our guest Cezar, VE3LYC, was born and raised in Romania and holds a PhD in physics. He has operated as VE3LYC since November 95 and holds the following awards: DXCC Honor Roll. He has 329 confirmed on digital, 10-band DXCC, worked all zone for sideband, CW, and RIDI. 5-band worked all zones, all 200. DXCC challenge is at 2918. He has 1,114 confirmed on IOTA. He has the IOTA trophy. He has 6 meters worked all states. On 6 meters, his VUCC count is 926. He has the U.S. Islands Award, which was number 500. He has the Russian Robinson Award on their honor roll, the Antarctica Award honor roll, as well as many others. He's also a member of the First Class Operators Club, the A1 Operators Club, the Chiltern CDX Club, and he serves as the IoT Operations Manager and Deputy General Manager, as well as serving on the Board of Directors of IOTA Limited. To top it all off, last May, Cezar was inducted into the CQ Hall of Fame at the DX dinner hosted by the Southwest Ohio DX Association. I had the honor of being there, and it was really a moment. As you will hear, he also knows how to bail water from a sinking ship and face off with polar bears. So tune in as Joe and I, WAGEX, discuss this expedition. Let's get started. Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of the DX Mentor. And I'll tell you, we are absolutely thrilled and excited. I say that every week, but I think Joe and I are both thrilled and excited this week. Wait till you meet our guest. He is a CQ Hall of Famer. He's been on maybe more DXpeditions than Joe has. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Between the two of them, I think they've been to 300 countries or so. And we're going to learn about this. And he's a class act. He's a gentleman, and he's a true ambassador for amateur radio. And we're going to get there in a minute. But Joe, WAGEX, so hello and tell us about yourself, buddy.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast this evening. I've been around since 1970. I started off as an SWL. I was an SWL for years and finally came up through the ranks and got all my licenses. Been on a lot of DXpeditions. Right off of the bat, I was hooked on 6 meters DXing into the Caribbean, and after that little experience, I absolutely fell in love with DXing and been on 62 DXpeditions. And for the most part, well, I have loved them all, but they all have their own little, I guess, problems in a small way. So tell us about you, Cezar. How'd you get started, buddy?
Good evening, and thank you very, very much for having me. My father was a ham since 1936, before World War II, and he was one of the guys who set up the first Romanian National Amateur Radio Association back then. And he stopped being a ham after the World War II. life, family, things got very different and, preoccupied him very much. But what I do recall is that the alphabet, the letters of the alphabet, the figures, and even geography. My first lessons of geography, I might have been, I don't know, 3, 4 years old. They were learned from the QSL cards of my father. And so when I got, I think when I was 14, I might have been, yeah, I think the Romanian Radio Federation had a special anniversary of the 30 years of, since the creation of the first National Amateur Radio Association. And they invited the old-timers to become hams without passing the regular exams. And my father took the opportunity to do that. And then I became, at the same time, a shortwave listener. There was the rule at the time for those who were not old timers, you had to be a shortwave listener, have a minimum number of contacts logged, and then you could pass the exams and become a ham. So this was in 1968. And interestingly enough, I got so I guess in love with this thing that called amateur radio that I started to operate on my father's station without. Well, I think he kind of knew, but let's say he didn't. With his call sign, obviously, all CW, obviously. And, I was in some contest. My father was not a contest guy. It wasn't like hard-hitting contest, but still. And at some point, that not too long into this, I got the phone rang. I picked up the phone, and lo and behold, it was the president of the Romanian Radio Federation, whom I knew very, very well, since I was going weekly at the club meetings. Central Radio Club meetings, and he said, so, just wait a second. I went, I'll give you my father. And he said, well, Cezar, actually, no, I'd like to talk to you. Okay, well, and make a long story short, he told me that, they love and appreciate very much my father, and I just can't do this, and, and this is not per the rules, and this, and they don't want him to be into trouble. And by the way, why don't I pass the exam? Everybody knows my father. They may be able to help me to get a 2-letter suffix. And when I heard that, I said, geez, man, that sounds like a good idea. And so, within a little while, I passed the exams, and I had my call sign, which back then was VE3LYC. And I chased DX for as much as I could, and also participated in all sorts of contests. Well, the conditions were very modest, but I was very passionate, and that was the end. That's kind of how it started, all that stuff.
So when did you decide to be the DX instead of just working the DX?
Well, that's a very that's kind of an interesting question. So after I moved to Canada, obviously the counters started from zero. And I was, again, very, very passionate, kind of worked a lot of DXs. I actually started from Canada 3.5 years after I came to Canada, just because work was, there's a lot of work, very busy. Conditions were, we're staying with different landlords, and it was difficult to necessarily convince them to allow me to set up any aerial and any station. But by November '95, I was able to start transmitting as VE3LYC, and then I think within I don't know, maybe about 10 years or so, maybe a little bit less, I started looking around for the possibility of being part of an expedition. And as hard as I could, I really tried, but pretty much nobody wanted to go with me. And I didn't want to go alone because I didn't want to make a fool of myself. And in the end, well, as I said, nobody wanted to go, so I had to go somewhere where I just have to pick up to make the decision of just going. And that happened in 2007 with a gentleman from England who was kind enough to be interested in this project of mine somewhere in Nunavut. It was one of these new uh, inactivated IOTA references,
Okay.
island references in Canada. And it was a total disaster. It was a disaster for the fact that because the people who were supposed to provide us with the logistics kind of didn't. And I didn't know how, there was not a big enough hole in the ground for me to get in and hide from, I guess, from the community, for the IOTA lover chasers and everyone else. But my friend Ken, G3OCA, he said, well, Cesar, I mean, things happen. You got to keep going. We have to go somewhere else, and fair enough. The next year we set foot on we set um, compass on a couple of very rare island groups um, out of Labrador. One of them in the northern Labrador. The only way to get there was with helicopter. You have to, so it was a very complex logistics. But this time, I was a lot more cautious. I worked a lot harder, perhaps, and we managed to do it. And from then on, I was bitten by this thing, and yeah, every year. Now, I had a few partners, so I was operating a business, and my partners hated me for going out there. Well, when I say hate, it's kind of in a nice let's put it in a nice way. But they really hated it. Why? Because they kind of figured out that I'm hanging on to some rocks and I might just something might happen.
Yeah.
And they didn't really want to have either my wife ending up in the board or any other mishaps, and so they were not, let's say, initially they were not very cooperative, so it was a kind of a hide and seek type thing. But after the first few expeditions, which happened to be quite perilous, let's put it this way, they kind of figured out that perhaps I'm learning from this, and I kind of know what I'm doing, although it looks like I should be doing I shouldn't be doing this. So that was a little bit challenging, but yeah. So that's kind of how it all started, and uh, then I figured out that you know. One of the interesting aspects, in my opinion, about this IOTA program, which is very difficult, is difficult because it takes a long time to have so many counters activated. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it takes a long time in the XCC where you have 340.
Right.
But in IOTA, where you have, as of today, 1141, I mean, it's
Gee.
gonna, it takes a long, long, long time. So it does require determination, but more than that, it requires time. And I think that it's not something that people have in big surplus. So it's in big amounts. So but one of the advantages, one of the I guess not advantage, one of the conditions of the other program is that you don't have to just contact the DX. In that case, the IOTA reference. You can actually activate the IOTA reference, and you receive credit for that too.
Oh, okay.
So because otherwise, I think there will probably never be people going there because
Yeah.
this was a little bit of an interesting thing. So then I kind of focused on once I got the first time I went to an IOTA operation, I already had confirmed 950 IOTA references to give an
Wow.
idea. I've had for a long time 339 in for the XCC in both CW and SSB. It's just that recently I got my 331st in data, and that was um, Jarvis.
Okay.
But what happened is that with the IOTA, um, because of this, it did because of this condition, this opportunity. You
Right.
go, you activate. Well, if it's a rare one, or if you need it, well, you have it too. It did create a little bit of a big incentive to go, well, to use one of the Star Trek things where nobody's gone before, and that kind of made it a little bit. Yeah, well, I guess more enticing,
Yeah, more appealing
Yeah,
to you.
more
sure.
appealing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, boy, several things came to mind. I looked at your website at curaz.com, and you've been on a ton of really interesting DXpeditions. So before we jump into the three golf uh, that's coming up, are there one or two that really stick out as being exceptional? And if so, why?
Yeah, there are quite a few actually, but I have a few. Unfortunately, I'm a stats buff. I like to keep stats on all sorts of things. Um, just the way my mind works, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the stats that I keep is for I guess how dangerous, or it's a very difficult thing to quantify this dangerous stuff. Something might be, you may feel that is hazardous or has a risk involved, and somebody else may say, well, I don't necessarily think so. To me, it's more of the adrenaline rush that you're getting out of it. Okay. And there's a list that I have. On that list, Bouvet 23, for example, it's for me number five-ish,
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the first two on the IOTA list are definitely something to remember. So it has to do with the fact that I mean, these events or the elements around the stuff that make it kind of challenging like that for me, as a personal experience, was that in one of these trips, which was to one of the Otto Islands. So this is in Hudson Bay, about 200 miles or so off maybe 180 or something of the east coast of Hudson Bay. So it's far for the type of I guess boats that locals have, right?
Okay.
And I've been refused by a number of locals to be taken there because they just think that they may not return. And well, in my mind, this was long, long, long time ago. It was very early in my expeditionary days. I thought that, well, they just don't want to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How difficult it can be. It's just a boat. Come on. I mean, you go. And so it happened that in the end, a couple of guys who are actually famous local carvers with exhibition. They're Inuit, carvers in ivory. They do some amazing things, with exhibitions from Tokyo to Chicago to all over the world. They decided to take a trip with me because the island where I was going to was some kind of a bonehead whale cemetery,
Okay.
and they would be able to harvest some material for their work. Okay, and one of them has been there. About 30 years earlier, and the other one has never been there. They were both in the mid 60s, mid 50s to late 60s, or mid 50s to mid 60s. And so to this kind of thing, money, a financial compensation, which was significant, was not enough. They have money. The money was not an issue for them. There
Okay.
had to be something else. They had to have a little bit of an adventurous spirit, and so to do this. So anyway,
Sure.
bottom line is that we went, and the respective boat, which was a 20-foot thing, I wouldn't even call it a boat, would have not been approved to be on water to begin with. Okay. I didn't know that. Uh, I thought that they knew that, but they didn't know that. Why? Because this was a boat that this community where they lived, called Pauvernituk, somewhere in Quebec, in the province of Quebec. Anybody could take the boat, do whatever they want, go fishing or entertaining or whatever, and then they would bring it back, but nobody would sign ever on what problems the boat had they had any problems. And so nobody was in charge of it per se, right? So this was a disaster waiting to happen, actually. I mean, this is in the hindsight, of course, was kind of a disaster waiting to happen, which is exactly what happened. So at some point, we lost power. The engine was dead, and we were still hours and hours going with, like, 5 kilometers an hour or 5 miles an hour. No, probably about 4 miles an hour or less than that. And we forgot that. Well, I didn't know to begin with, but they definitely forgot that by not having power on the main engine, the sump pump, which is supposed to be activated manually every 15 minutes or so to evacuate the water from the engine compartment, did not operate. And all of a sudden, we were in the middle of the night, still way far from the island. We pretty much, I just heard the captain saying, "Cezar, put everything on top of the cabin. We're sinking." And
Oh,
I noticed that the water was just coming up my pants, incredibly fast. And I never imagined that I could take 200 amp. I mean, I'm a small frame guy, okay? 200 amp batteries and put them there, and all these canisters with gas and water and think, and while these guys were, open the engine compartment, starting to bail the water out. The problem was, though, once the boat got under a certain level, the water was pouring in through countless, I guess, pieces that should have been welded, but they weren't. There were holes in it and so on and so forth. So, and one of the guys ripped his shirt, t-shirt, whatever he had, and with a screwdriver start
oh,
uh, start filling the holes. It
Gee,
was, had we been able to have a camera, like, nobody could spend time to do this, but it was really on the edge. It was just absolutely on the edge. And so yeah, I published a book about these expeditions, up to 2020, if I remember correctly. And it's called Dream Big and Dare to Fail. And it's quite a story about this thing there. But anyway, so finally we get to the island. We do our thing. We have to come back, and obviously we encountered the polar bear, and we had to rush to leave. Yeah. So on the way back, we the engine died, just died. Obviously, when I mean, I should tell you that when we're bailing, nobody said a word. Everybody was working like,
sure.
it was clockwork, but my mind all the time was that, what kind of rifle these guys have? If we end up in the water, are we going to be able to take care of the polar bears? Um, Not even imagining that the temperature of the water was probably, I don't know, just above the freezing point. So, we wouldn't have made it anyway.
oh,
Uh, but we made it, and then on the way back, they kind of fixed the engine, whatever they did. But the engine then gave in within perhaps the first half hour. And so it died completely. And then we just had to go with a 4 horsepower, tiny little engine. The boat, the captain who refused to take me there in the first place, said, "I'm not coming for these guys unless they cross the point of no return, the middle of the distance, the mid distance, you know." So that's something that stuck to me. Yeah, there's in the meantime, the mayor of Povernituk announced the search and rescue, um, which is like 5 hours flight from there to do a search. And I told the guy we were in contact with him. I said, "No, we don't want any search and rescue. We'll come on our own." He said, "No, you don't, but I need them to come because they haven't been there in ages. And if I really need, we'd have a serious event. They wouldn't know. They have no idea where to go. They have to get trained. But
So
it
this
was,
was this
and
was a
there was a huge C-300 circling us for about an hour and a half, to give you an idea. Until we reached the first islands, the islands that were closest to the eastern board of Hudson Bay. So yeah, so this was for me by far the most adrenaline rush thing. We could have sunk. There's no question in my mind that we could have. And I have to thank these guys who knew what they were doing, and their skills, and the fast response time and on this kind of thing. So that's number one. And number two probably is an expedition to another island in north of Canada. It's called East Pan. So at the time was part of another never activated island group. This was not by design, but the guide who took me there. So we went through we had to go there in winter because this is a part of the Polar Bear National Park, and on this particular island they seem to congregate in large numbers. And so we went there in winter. It was absolutely very, 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 very cold. And it was not by design, but the guy decided to, now that he set me up, he could just leave and bring somebody else. He will pay that guy a portion of whatever I paid him, and everybody would be happy, except that guy never arrived. And he never arrived because one of a sudden, March conditions, very, very cold up there, became within less than a day, within half a day, it became probably end of April kind of conditions. And it was so warm, sleds don't go on water, they just couldn't come to me. And it happened, I was kind of left there for 3 nights, 4 days. It was quite a bit, I'm a kind of a city boy. I'm not necessarily the explorer, enduring this kind of things. And I remember that before he left, I said, "Well, okay, well, you're leaving me, but shouldn't I have a rifle or something?" I said, "Well, here's a rifle. You have 10 bullets." I said, "Okay, but how should I use the rifle?" We're talking about the polar bears. Well, it shouldn't be any polar bear because they would be very high up at the time, not there in winter. But he said, "Well, for me, it has to be very close because you can't miss. If you miss, you're done." He said, "Well, close, like what does it mean?" "Well, for me, that's 6 feet. 6 feet? Are you kidding me? I mean, the animal is bigger than 6 feet. What am I supposed to do?" I said, "Well, you shoot him right in the center of his head." And within few hours, I don't remember now. Maybe within maybe more. Yeah, within. So as part of this time that I spent alone, about a day perhaps, was still with enough gas to be able to operate the generator.
okay.
Once the gas finished, that was an issue because now, I had to be there and give cues and things, and it's okay. But now that nothing is happening, The polar bear was in my mind all the time, although I
Sure.
knew that they shouldn't be there. They cannot be there. But, I know that, but does the polar bear know that, And so I remember that I couldn't sleep at night. I was right in the middle of the tent with the weapon. Just, I said, listen, they're not going to find any bullet left. I'm going to shoot, and then when there's not going to be any, then so it was pretty stupid, of course, but yeah. So another part of adrenaline, So I
Wow.
didn't have anything to heat. I didn't have any water because once the gas finished. And I wasn't to use the gas to melt water, to
The
melt and
snow and yeah.
the snow. So, but again, it's not all the guys who go up there, they read of, Amundsen stories and all the guys who went down south, Scott and um, Shackleton. So, there are ways um, to survive. It's not actually quite that, you don't have to sweat that much. You don't have to do anything. There's no really, but the adrenaline, if you're not used to it, yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's kind of
So
there. So anyway, so these are probably topping my
I I'm not an
game.
IoT guy, but
That's fair enough.
I'm going to give you a piece of advice, okay? And I think Joe would agree with me. If we were going to go do an IOTA off the coast of Louisiana, and the place we picked was the Island of Deadly Snakes, we wouldn't go.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so I think going to Polar Bear Park.
Well, we tried to go there in the summer, but unfortunately, the locals were not cooperative.
Yeah,
And, it took me a while to understand. I've been quite a few times in the Arctic, and it took me quite a while to understand. They have a certain, we're not talking about, you getting taught in I guess native philosophy or things like that. It doesn't happen. You have to be with them, and they have a way of letting you know without necessarily either trying to make things quite as clear. But over time, you realize that their philosophy is actually very simple. I'm not going. This is where humans live. This is where polar bears live. If I'm going there, I'm going to confuse them. And they might say, okay, well, if you want to be here, then I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And they might just come where you don't want them to be in the first place. And so if they really want and have to, kill an individual, like, an animal, they will,
yeah.
but they don't want to necessarily. And number one, and number two, they don't go over, to displace them from where they think that it's their habitat, it's their, So for us, we have no choice. We want to go there because that's, by the way, that particular island is the only counter of that IOTA reference, and it was
Oh,
not activated until then. So, this is why I got the advice from them the first time I was there, and it didn't work out. If you want to do it, come in winter. Come in winter with us. So we organize things that will go in winter, and it worked out, except that, um, well, Mother Nature had some,
some other plans.
Some
yeah,
other
some other
plan.
plans, so yeah.
I really like what you said earlier because I've always felt bad about these guys that go like you go to Bouvet. Like if somehow I flew to Bouvet right now and I operated, I wouldn't get credit for Bouvet because I'd never worked it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
like the idea. And I got to tell you, Joe and I twice have been allowed to go to North Korea, but we turn it down each time because we wouldn't get credit for it, right? So
Yeah.
Right. Now, well, I guess there's another perspective we can look into. So most of the DXCC activities do nowadays. Well, I don't know what happened many years ago. I wrote a little bit of an article CDXC Digest about this stuff. About people being in having their own call sign in logs, and so I don't know how this happened long time ago. I'm not gonna assume. I'm not gonna suggest anything. It's not my business. But more recently, at least over the last, I would say more than 10 years for sure, you can, in some jurisdictions, such as Canada and definitely United States, you can have somebody operating your station, or you can operate your station remotely and get credit because the call sign is associated to the station, not necessarily to the operator. I could come and operate in a contest, for instance, your station with your call sign, and you will get credit for that, not me. Now, that may or may not be considered fair by whoever, but the bottom line is that the XCC tacitly accepts that. So, as long as let's say you are on Bouvet, and one way or another, either your neighbor, friend, or yourself, can operate your station, I mean your home station, then you could make contact. So this is allowed by the DXCC, but is not allowed by IOTA.
Right.
Strangely, it's not allowed by IOTA. And there are many reasons why this happens, and I don't necessarily want to get into them too much. Perhaps this is not very interesting right now, but one of them, because you guys, not as Bill just said, it's not really the IOTA fan, but one of the issues is the IOTA does not consider contacts via satellite. They do consider contacts Earth, Moon, Earth, but not via satellites.
Oh,
And so the big question is, well, to make such a remote contact, you need to, well, I guess some internet, some kind of a Starlink, some kind of a device that will allow you to operate, and that comes through satellite. Number one. Number two, the other issue why this is a little bit of a, not to everybody's pleasure, but it is an IOTA thing, is that conceptually, the IOTA is supposed to be based on people going to islands and operating from the islands. Okay. Now we have rules now that allow someone who owns a station on the island and is in the same DXCC to operate that station. That's acceptable. But not if that person is outside of his jurisdiction. And perhaps that has something to do with the fact that this is not permitted in the UK. And while this is an international program, it's still administered by IOTA Limited, which is a UK organization. It's a non-for-profit organization, and at the basis, at the base, it's base the base of the program. It's grounded in I guess the UK Ofcom rules, and they do not accept these things. So we had during Bouvet, we had all sorts of discussions about this, and it seems to me that there's a disadvantage between the hams in United States and Canada so they have an advantage where they could get legally such credits for some of these operations just by remote. I'm talking about the DXCC credits through remote operation of their stations. While the guys from other countries, such as Germany, Norway, they can't. Well, not legally.
right. Yeah, and IOTA is going to be that's going to be one of my targets next year to get involved and see what I can do. It's really a neat program.
I think that you already have, without knowing. I mean, if somebody, let's say, either of you gentlemen, you've been around for a very, very long time, without even knowing, you probably have a ton of credits that you don't even, they're not aware of. But and I think that we had some applicants over the last few years now what the IOTA program offers the same QSO matching sort of that DXCC offers for, via LOTW. We offer it via LOTW and via
Oh,
Club Log. So, now it is possible for someone who operate, I'm just saying, somebody who operated in 1960s, in the 60s, that we wouldn't have necessarily track of those
right.
activities, some
Right.
activities, and obviously, and there's or we have tracked them, but there's no log available. But for all the major, DXCCs, which were also IOTAs, then they are logs, and people got credit. And we had a Japanese station not that long ago who, I think, if I remember correctly, got credit for 700, 600 or 700 IOTA IOTA groups, just through QSO matching via Log of the World and Club Log, which I think is remarkable. I mean, just get in today and
Yeah.
you work for 20 years and you may just get 300, 400, 500, 600, whatever.
Wow. Well,
Anyway, let's move from
yeah,
IOTA
yeah,
because
yeah. That's fine. No, no. So Joe, before I jump on something else here, anything you wanted to follow up on?
Well, just that I did for several years a group of us out of Southwest Ohio DX Association. We went on, we did the contest in the Caribbean. And me and the boys, I don't know, there would be 6 or 8 of us for sure that would go and work the contest. But we did that, gee whiz, I bet 8 or 10 times. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it was fun. And of course, we
Oh,
would be down there maybe for 10 days, but our goal was to work the contest, the IOTA contest. Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, so one of the honors that Cezar and I haven't given his call yet, VE3LYC, but one of the honors that he was given was that he was inducted into the CQ Hall of Fame, and I had the honor of taking some pictures and recording it at the DX dinner. So Cezar, just a minute, how did you feel about that, and can you tell us about that whole thing? You were so
um,
moved. It was really neat to see
yeah,
somebody
yes,
move like that.
yeah. Uh, and Doug yeah. So I obviously received a call from Bob and N2OO, who informed me about this. Just a second, my wife will probably pick up this one, hopefully. If not, anyway. So I received, he informed me about this at least 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before Dayton, and well, I swear I read his message twice before replying because I wasn't sure this was a prank. Then I kind of wrote him and I said, well, what can I say? Yeah. So I probably for the first 18 to 24 hours, I was kind of floating. I was in a extra normal zone. I was, on a cloud somewhere.
Sure.
But then I came back to Earth very quickly. So yes, what can I say? It wasn't, I never expected. It wasn't, it was a huge, huge honor. I realized that it was for this some of these expeditions, and um, this IOTA thing is it's the little sister of the tiny little sister of the big DXCC. So yeah, it was obviously a huge honor, and perhaps while it was for me a huge honor, I think that I was particularly delighted that somehow I am, in a certain way, part of the DXCC community acknowledging the IOTA program as something that's captivating the interest of many over the years.
Yes.
And what can I say? Yeah, I was very emotional I prepare a speech. The speech was supposed to be very short, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. Um, but I got there and once the microphone started to be active, I think I spoke, I don't know, maybe less than 10 words, and then I kind of lost it for probably about a minute and a half, maybe
Yeah,
two. Um, Unfortunately, but that's
yeah,
what.
I thought you did fine. And it
Yeah.
was, some guys get up there and they're like, "Oh, okay, this is really great." I mean, you clearly appreciated what was being done.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really neat. I really do. It was very
You
genuine,
know,
very sincere. So
when I started these activities, the activations, uh, for a couple of reasons. The first was that it was a little bit of a dry season for me in terms of the DXCCs. I was kind of high um, in rankings at the time, whatever, and relatively high, and with respect to the number of years that I was operating. So it wasn't really something to do, and it looked like I should be returning something for all the fun that I've had countless of moments throughout the years. And I had the means, so I thought that there would be kind of a neat thing to do. Okay, so that's what made me do it. But it wasn't too. It was later on that I realized that at least in this IOTA world, I'm captivating the attention of some guys, and that was kind of probably perhaps a little bit addictive in the sense that yeah, if you can do this now, well, let's try something a little more interesting. Let's try
yeah,
something a little more challenging. And
Yeah.
yeah, we may break a leg, but if we don't, that'll be great.
yes, that's right.
So, but and it was particularly touchy for me that I saw it happened in this random things that the world is all about, to be the first Canadian inducted in the CQDX. And it's I couldn't have probably been able to do it without um, the second part of my professional activity,
Yep.
which took place in Canada. So it is. Yeah, I guess in the end, it's a huge honor, absolutely unexpected. I was, thrilled to the moon, and uh, I guess ever obliged to, uh, keep returning
Yeah, well,
something to the
good. That's
community.
great. And I took your advice. I just ran I have a button I can click on my logging software for IOTA, which I've never looked, and I have almost 500. So you're
There you
right.
go.
You work a lot
Really?
of them and you get some, it starts to build up.
Yes,
So
yes,
um,
yes.
let's switch gears. I'm going to read what Bernie put out, which will be a good starting then for us because we're going to be talking about the DXpedition, the 3 Golf 1 Papa.
Mm,
And I thought getting you on would be great. We could cover a lot of bases. But here's what Bernie W3R wrote. A team composed of Cezar VE3LYC, Felipe XQ7IR, and Johan PA3EXX plans to activate Pajaros Rocks, which is SA100, and this is new, first time. These rocks are located in the north of Chile, about 100 kilometers south of Iquique, in the vicinity of the fishermen's village of Caleta Lobos. One of these two rocks has a round shape with a diameter of just under 60 meters. Wow. While the second one is oval in shape, about 60 by 30 meters. Both rocks are very rugged, and landing can only be attempted by swimming to them and pacing against the waves. Did you know this?
oh, yeah.
They also have very steep slopes and host colonies of sea lions and cormorants. Two reputed amateur radio teams attempted to land and operate from these rocks in 2018 and 2019, but their efforts were regretfully unsuccessful. Despite these setbacks, an independent project to bring Pajaros on the air continued to be pursued, but it was initially postponed due to COVID and then due to other DXpedition projects that emerged. Cezar and Johan carried out together several IOTA expeditions in the past. As such, they operated from Herschel, South America, Diego Ramirez, South America, Sandy, which is oceanic, and Escondida, which was South America. Escondida is a rather much similar rock to Pajaros, but larger in size, about 100 by 35 meters, and not as steep. Consequently, we expect that the landing logistics and challenges in dealing with the wildlife will also be similar. This sounds like quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is. It is. I think the biggest challenge is, well, my age. I would have liked to be younger, and I really tried very hard to set up a project. Yeah, the name in Spanish is Pajaros, and means birds. Okay,
okay.
um, um, but unfortunately, you need some contact down there, and my contacts didn't, for a number of reasons which are unimportant right now. It's all within the reach anyway, but for different reasons, they just couldn't accept to do a number of things, or to visit, and just put in place some of the logistics. We can think about it, but somebody actually has to go and talk to the locals and explain, and so on and so forth. So, I was asked by the teams who attempted to bring Pájaros on the air in 2018 and 2019 about the logistics, and I absolutely told them how I think that the logistics should be carried out. I wasn't to be part of those, but I offered my opinion about that. Unfortunately, both teams decided to do it their own way. And so they got there, and they were not prepared. They didn't have steel drums to transport the equipment to the rock. They
Oh,
didn't have any ways to climb the rock. The rock is very, very steep, and so I hate to say it, but it was, the preparations were not at par with the difficulty that these rocks put. It's just as simple as that. Anyway, the long story short now is that we had this precedent of Escondida. So Escondida is a place where it's a little bit further away from the coast. This island is perhaps within a kilometer. The closest one, there are two rocks, but they're just like 100 to 200 meters, a few hundred meters away from each other. So Escondida is about 4.5, 5 kilometers from the shore. And the difficulty with that is that you can only see the conditions once you get there. So but unfortunately, in that operation, which is probably ranks number 3 for me, is difficulty after the two that I mentioned earlier. That one it not only requires swimming, but the colony of sea lions when we got there was hundreds of individuals strong. And we got there despite what I wanted at the breeding time. And so they had this little kitten garden sort of how should I say, the babies once they born, they kept in little squarish areas of about, I'd say about 5 by 8 meters or something on that range. And the mama sea lion comes and does some sounds. The respective baby replies, and is picked up and is fed, and then is put back.
really?
And the males are absolutely staunchy territorial. They wouldn't budge. They would be like everything would be like in a matrix, in a where in order to move one of them, everybody has to move. Like, and there'll be tens of them that have to move, and it doesn't happen. They don't budge. They're huge, and they. So we landed. We couldn't. We had an accident, a boating accident, and then as a result of that accident, we couldn't retrieve the equipment. The secondary boat was unable to permit us to retrieve all the equipment that we had there.
Oh my God.
And so we lost a lot of equipment, antennas and things, and yeah, so it was it was a big thing. We had to leave it overnight. We couldn't put it up enough up on the hill, and when the high tide came in, the next day there was nothing left, absolutely nothing. The only thing we found was a sledgehammer, which was, however, we kept um, some some spare equipment which we used. So we relanded. We managed to do this stuff. In the process, we had another person, the head of the logistical team, who got hurt. So we learned out of this very, very difficult operation how not to do it, what works and what doesn't, how to prepare the contingencies that would eventually enhance our ability to withstand difficult to go over difficulties and achieve the final result, which is
Right.
be able to set up camp and operate.
Right.
So in a certain sense, yes, this is very, very similar, except that there are a couple of dissimilarities. One of them is that the island, being much smaller, doesn't allow enough room for both operators and sea lions. Now, the good news, according to the fishermen who visited it recently, there aren't as many sea lions. So either this is a seasonal thing and we're lucky, in which case, hooray, let's go, or just simply this particular island doesn't hold as much of a colony as Escondida. Number one,
Right.
that's a good thing. The second thing is that the island, it's a lot sharper, a lot harsher, a lot raises it much above the water compared with Escondida. Escondida in Spanish is hidden. The island, if the sea is a little agitated, you can't really see it. And this is why it's covered by foam and thing, and this is why if the weather's bad, Escondida or the waters around Escondida transforms into a cemetery of boats. Not Pajaros. Pajaros is not the same. Is not as perilous. It's more difficult once you land to be able to get up the top, but it's not covered by. It's a little. The height is it's quite a bit more, and so it's not as doesn't have that low profile.
Right.
We'll have to see. Anyway, we have plans to install. We have a contingency to install a rope ladder. We have a 7-meter rope ladder. We have contingencies to transport equipment with a large tube, like a tractor tube, where we manufactured. The fishermen manufactured for us a net in the middle where we can put the generators to transport them to the rock. The generator will be in a hypalon bag. Hypalon bags, for those who don't know, it's kind of hypalon. It's a much sturdier material than the usual dry bag, which is just a thin polyurethane. It's a rubber. It's a very thick rubbery polyurethane compound, and which we used in Bouvet 2023, and these particular hypalon bags are identical to the ones we use for the same type of generators, which are the smaller generators in Bouvet 2026, the EU30,
Okay.
the EU22, the EU22I. In Bouvet, we'll take with us bigger equipment, bigger generators, the EU30s, but those are a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. It's a bigger hypalon bag, but these ones are exactly the same type. So they're protected against water, and we want to keep them vertical, and then we're going to have them hoisted up by sheer force. We plan to not have equipment that is much heavier than, say, 25 kilograms or something on that range, maybe 20 to 30 kilos. And maybe do more of these rounds rather than few, so that we don't have to pull things
Right.
very, very, very heavy things. Yeah. And the other issue is that we also have another contingency. The major problem there, according to the fishermen who just visited the island twice over the last couple of weeks for us, is that in order to take advantage of the good tide, we have to be there in the morning. That's when apparently the sea is calmer. Now, the problem with this is that in the morning, either there's some dew or whatever, but the bottom line is that the guano on the rocks is wet and that is extremely slippery. So therefore, we're going to have some contingencies. We don't know if it's going to be wet or not, or exactly how, but in case it's very wet, we have number one, we're going to have a step ladder. We're going to have a rope ladder to help us get up, and we will anchor it with rebars, with 10 millimeter diameter rebars. We'll have 6 points to do that, or 6 or 8 points to do that. And we also, if need be, in case, we'll have a harness, a safety harness. So we'll be able to, with the two, hopefully stay on the safe side of things. Now, the other guys, Felipe, he's 44. I'm 71, so it's kind of a big difference. So I'm sure that he's in great shape. And Johan is 60 or 61, so he's also younger, and I'm sure he's in great shape. I've been with him many, many times. So that's what I'm saying. The weakest link is my age, but we hope to be able to overcome it, and hopefully we'll be fine. But this is you don't have to go to Bouvet to experience something really difficult. I mean, you can go to this particular rock, and yeah, it's not Bouvet. We don't have. It's not the cold. It's not it's a different area of. But by the same token, it's not for the faint of heart, because it does have a bit of it does have a challenge, and it's going to be for sure one of the most challenging projects that I've done. And had it not been for the age, I might have been a little bit less, let's say, stressed. But we have to be careful. So,
Joe, go ahead.
So a couple of times you mentioned about getting up to the top of the rock. So when you get to the top of the rock, is there a flat surface that you'll operate from?
That is correct. So the rock it's not perfectly flat, but it has a couple of areas that are flat, although they are one kind of on top of the other. So there's enough place to put. So we will have one. Our intention is to have a 2-element beam for 10, 15, and 20, and two verticals, two multi-band verticals. Okay, there's room for that. There's no question about it. With let's say about 20 meters between them. We don't need the beam to be that far away, but I'm just saying. And we plan of having two tents. One will be the operational tent, or tents for operations, and the other one will be for sleep, rest, food, eat, whatever. Yes, we actually have a mock design was done by Felipe of this, and we think that there's no question that there's enough room. We also plan for the toilets. It's kind of the same plan that we have for Bouvet. Well, keep the dimensions in, the differences in place, but it's the same, pretty much the same concept. And we also, what is also a little bit of and we needed another contingency for this, is the fact that the guano, except for the vertical or very, very steep surfaces, is 30 to 50 centimeters long, deep. Now, you may ask, how do I know that? Well, I know because the fishermen just been there and they tested it. So now that is very deep, and we don't plan to remove that in order to anchor the tents or, you know, set up the masts and things like that. What we plan to do instead is to bring something to anchor them, because we're not going to be able to anchor. The only thing we're going to be able to anchor, if we want to anchor something, is the rope ladder. Not only that we have to, but that will be in somewhat vertical or, you know, steeply inclined uh, rock walls, which, you know, those don't have guano, or too small of amounts, and they wash by the spray, the ocean spray. So there are two options. Obviously, the trivial option is just get some rocks. There are no rocks, small sizes on this massive rock. So what I thought of originally, it was well, one option is obviously something like interlocking bricks. You know, you have the interlocking bricks. We get a few of those, and you operate, and you. Obviously, there's another option, and that is to get some empty plastic kegs or canisters or whatever, which you fill with seawater, and then you transport them up, and then you empty them and you take them out, and you know. And you know, so unfortunately, this idea, we kind of studied them. We talked to fishermen, and their decision was to go with interlocking rocks because they're smaller in size. They're about 4 point some kilograms. It's about 4 or 5 kilos. About, let's say, about 10 pounds, and so one can easily carry them up. Well, you may have to do quite a few rounds, but we can do that. And those will be anchors. They will anchor the tents, and they will anchor the masts. More for the tents, very few for the masts. With these canisters, which seems like a great idea, why at least you don't have to bring down the weights. The problem is that in order to have sufficient support, we can't rely on the equivalent of 10 pounds. The tent may just, I don't know if going to fly in the wind, but it doesn't, you know, we have to have, you know, and bigger weights. And so their opinion was that, well, it's going to be a lot easier to bring, you know, a couple of 20 pounds, a couple of 10-pound rocks than, and do this many times than to bring with the seawater, you know,
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
pound or
Sure.
bigger canisters. And so their decision was they're going to do this, and allegedly they've already put a few there, and we'll get more. And now then we'll have to take them out, which is, you know, but that's the rule of the game. So
Yeah.
whatever we take in, we're going to have to take out. So we yeah.
So how many operators will you have?
We have three operators. So
Three
it's
operators.
going to be Felipe, Johan, and I. And well, I don't think that this one will be reactivated. Well, it will take a while to get reactivated. So this is why we really want to put a good show. We really want to give enough, let's say, contacts out there, and perhaps we just inspire, or whatever, some other guys to do this again, or something else that's as challenging, or hopefully more. So
Yeah.
you know, yeah. But the general idea is that we will have a couple of amplifiers, not the big amplifiers. We're not talking about the Bouvet amplifiers, although we'll have six 500 watts amplifiers there. So we're going to have a 500-watt amplifier. We're going to have an Elecraft, you know, MPA 500, and we're going to have an RM 505, which is, I think, if I remember correctly, it's about 300-watt amplifier, which I think is good with the beam. Should be okay.
Yeah.
kind of
So how
radio?
many days do you anticipate being there?
Okay, we want to be there for 5 nights, so 5 full days. Reason being that we never know if we may get in any of these. I mean, yes, IOTA expeditions are shorter, but if you get a solar event, you might just waste a couple of days, maybe even 3. So we have to have enough time to still. It's a contingency for that, right?
Yeah, sure.
And if we manage to keep, as I said, we should plan. We're actually planning on 3 stations. One of them will be FT8, and one will be SSB, one will be FT8, and one will be CW. We'd like to have a little bit of a balanced approach, sort of, well, aiming for one third, one third, one third of the contacts, but we'll see what how conditions behave. I'm talking about the propagations and propagation conditions, this kind of stuff. But we are very optimistic. The issue is not, I'm comfortable with the operation. The idea is that to get there and make sure that everything is, set up properly. And if that works, it will be. I'm sure that many people will read, well, this is 3 Golf 1 Papa all about. They'll read and say, oh, let's give them a call. So
Yeah,
it doesn't
sure.
have to be the IOTA guys. And who knows, there may be some people who will decide later on, a year, 2, 5 from now, who knows, longer to join this crowd. And
That's
it'll
kind
be
of
fun.
that's kind of what we always tell them. If whether you're chasing DX or not, for instance, if Jarvis is on and it's not going to be on for another 10 years, you need to get it in the log. And then if
Yeah.
you never decide, then fine. But so one thing I have a little bit of trouble with is you've got these big rocks, and I imagine there's rocks all around them as well. So how far out is your boat going to be anchored to
Yeah.
make sure it doesn't bash? And then how are you going to get to the rocks and back?
Well, that's a good point. We're not going to be able to anchor the boat. The sea is very deep there. What we're going to do, we're going to have 2 boats, and the 2 boats will try to maneuver so that one boat will be let's say, as stable as fixed as possible. So uh, the idea is that the boat, the boats don't have to. The other reason why we want to use 2 boats is because we have a phased approach to begin with. So we have what we call an essential equipment, essential gear, camping gear, and essential food, water, and fuel supplies. Okay. And there's a non-essential part or secondary part of phase if we can. Okay. So we aim to do them both, one after the other sequentially. But if the weather changes, if the sea changes, we have to have the ability of we didn't do this in Escondida and it was paid dearly because the accidents that occurred, when the accident occurred, we had enough equipment. Let's say we have enough supplies, but they were not sufficient to operate properly. We still, instead of phasing the project properly, it was kind of, well, let's throw this here because it goes together, and we ended up with a lot of radios, but we didn't have generators, or you didn't have power, you didn't have gas or whatever. So, this is not going to happen now. And so the conditions are such that we need those essentials landed absolutely. People and essentials there have to be done. And then if conditions are good, we go with the non-essentials or supply or the extra supplies or whatever. And then if the weather changes on us, the wind, the sea, then this will be done later on. We have to have minimum food and supplies for 3 days. And so within the next, hopefully, couple of days, there'll be time when the villagers the fishermen will provide us with those.
What type of
But the
transport?
boat, to answer, the boat will not be that far from the rock.
Okay.
I would hope that will be within 15 meters if the conditions require to be safer, maybe 20. But we're not talking about swimming Olympic distances here. It's a short swim. This is not something very complicated. The only thing is that you have the hull, and you're going to have to pace it against the hull so that when the hull goes up, then you have to hit the rock and stick to it like a Spider-Man, because it will go down. And then when you want to do, before it comes back to you, you want to move up 1 or 2 steps. That's enough. Then after this, we have the ladders, we catch the ladders, we go up, but the process of landing is not trivial. It does require pacing against the and by the way, everyone, both team members and the logistical team, not the guys, not the drivers, not the boat drivers, but the guys who will be in the water, who will go with us, who will help us out. Everybody's going to have wetsuits. Everybody's going to have neoprene suits. Why? Because the rocks have thousands and thousands of tiny little shells of marine animals, which cut like blades, and like the sharpest blades. And so there's nowhere you're going to put your foot or your hand where you're not going to be cut. So sure. That's another issue why you have to pace yourself. You can, and you have to have these neoprene gloves that will allow you to, stick and stay there for a little bit and then just move up a little bit so that the water is not going to drag you down, because it goes up, and then when it comes down, it pushes you. It sucks you, and you don't want that. It's nothing hopefully going to be terribly bad. It's just that you're going to waste energy by going back and forth, and the more you do that, the more tiring it's going to be, and you don't want that to happen. Keep in mind, once you're up there, you need to operate all night long.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not like, I'm going to take a rest and we'll operate tomorrow. Yeah, no, there's no, yeah. No.
Wow. So what kind of transceivers, Cezar?
So we're going to have a Yaesu, a DX10, which is kind of a small little thing. And I'm going to have my... we have 4 actually, but I'm going to use my ICOM 7000. The ICOM 7000 are, old technology, but they're very small. They're just, I think is less than 5 pounds. Wow. It does not have an antenna tuner, but the antennas are tuned to not require an antenna tuner. So the way I build the multi-band verticals, they do not require a tuner. It's not a 1-to-1, but it's a 1 to 1.3, 1.4. It's acceptable. Usually goes very well and saves a bit of, a few grams here, a few grams there. In the end, we save a lot of money, or it's a lot of weight. We have everything is going to be transported in seal drums, but we don't want to fill them to be very heavy, because the walls are very steep, and we don't intend to go and carry anything up on top. Everything will be hoisted, but it's easier to hoist something if it's 20 kilos or 30 kilos than if it's 60 kilos or 80 kilos. So, yeah, we don't want people to slip. We don't want, to slide and to have accidents, and
So you're pretty much right on the equator, or slightly. What kind of weather are you expecting in August there?
That's a very good question. The weather is supposed to be dry pretty much all the time there. Now, dry doesn't mean that we're in the Atacama Desert, but it's pretty dry. So do we actually expect any rain? No. Could it happen? Yes, but it's not a high probability. Okay. So the temperatures should be around during daytime. If we're lucky, they go to 20, 21, maybe 22. At night, 17, 16. That's not that bad. So we will have, sleeping bags. We'll have some mats to sit on. And what will be very important is that uh, there would be a very, very stingy smell of ammonia. Um,
Yeah.
but because the rock is so small, uh, same happened on Escondida. um, the um, the air circulation is such that it very rarely, yeah, every now and then, I guess you're getting a little bit of a whiff, but most of the time it's not as bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just almost continuous type of refreshing air. It's okay. Yeah.
So what would be your logistics to actually get to the point where now you're getting on the boat? Are you flying from Toronto to?
That is correct. So we fly, well, each of us flies from wherever they are coming from. Felipe comes from the southern part of Chile, so he flies. And so it happened that Felipe and I will actually meet on the Santiago airport uh,
Okay.
and fly together to Iquique. Whereas Johan, he will arrive in Iquique about half an hour prior to us. So then we have to rent a vehicle on the airport, not only because we need something to get to Iquique, but because we need to do quite a bit of shopping. So we already know where the stores where we find what we need to find. Felipe has already been there and scooped out everything, but we still have to go to pick it up, to pay for it, to bring it to the hotel, we stay at an Airbnb, and from there, so we have the car for 2 days.
Okay.
And actually, we try we're planning, we accelerated the plan a little bit. Originally, the plan was to be there on the 18th, to attempt landing on the 18th. But we want to have another contingency, and that is to attempt landing on the 17th. So we want to travel on the 16th, prepare for landing, do all the equipment, all the preparation, everything else, and then attempt it on the 17th. If the weather, not the weather, but if the sea conditions are, the sea is not cooperating, then we may have to postpone it for 18th, and we actually have time to postpone it another day even. So we can we can go on 17, 18, or 19. Um, and we can, whichever day we can stay 5 in case we go on the 17th. Who knows? We may be able to stay 6.
Yeah.
We will have enough gas. We'll have enough food. This is not an issue. Uh, but but the contingency is because last week um, um, the head of the logistical team, his name is Juan Zaveda. He went with a couple of guys to the island, and during the first day, he with great difficulty was able to land. The sea was just awful, but he did it though. Whereas a couple of days later, or maybe even the next day, I don't remember. I think couple of days later, yeah, the sea was like a lake. It was unbelievable. And
Wow.
he was just he said, I have to go, I have to go, and he did go, and he was able to take some of those interlocking bricks or rock, or yeah, whatever you call them. I think they're called interlocking bricks, right? And move them on top. And
Okay.
in the process, he also installed, if I remember correctly, he told us that he installed a couple of ropes just to give us a little more support. But Felipe manufactured a rope ladder. So the rope ladders, it has all the ladders are made of wood, and it's supposed to be a little inclined. It's not vertical. It's probably about 70 degrees or
Okay.
something like that. Yeah, so it's a contingency. If we don't have to use it, we're not going to use it, but we are prepared. I mean, I think it's great. It's very, very difficult for me to imagine that we could have prepared better for this operation. Other than having a helicopter who will drop us there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have everything else. We thought of everything that could be thought about, and I feel pretty good about it. I mean, what I
Yeah.
say, but
Yeah.
again, we'll see what Mother Nature throws at us.
That's right. Well, I know we have some IOTA listeners. I also know we have some WPX listeners. And then we have
Okay.
guys who just like to operate, and find people on the air. If somebody wanted to financially help you guys, are you collecting money to help you offset the cost of all this,
We
or
absolutely do.
okay,
The major, well, this operation is perhaps, it's not as I guess expensive as I don't know. I mean, I'm not talking about Bouvet, but any large expedition. First of all, because the people involved, there's such a low number, but we still have to compensate these guys
yep,
who are helping us out. The flights are kind of expensive. Then, as you know very well, we have we bought a couple of generators. We prefer not to rent because we were kind of concerned. Who knows what we may get? We may get something good, may not get something good.
right,
And
Yeah.
we actually plan to sell them at half price. But there's some. So on the website, on the expedition website, there's a which is at HTTP. No, HTTP. What was that? Three Golf 1P
yeah,
SA dash 100 from South America 100, which is the outer group at Weebly Weebly weebly.com. So if anybody wishes to support, it's fine. Obviously this is a very good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, very IOTA activator and passionate chaser told me, said, well, Cesar, how many expeditions you abandoned to do, you gave up on because you didn't receive funding? And I said, well, none. Well,
none,
that's what I thought.
yeah,
So, we are serious about this. It's a project we've been talking for the last 6 months, almost every day. And yeah, I think it has to be done at this point in time, but we appreciate sincerely any help that anybody may be able to do. And if not, we understand. No, this is what it is. What it is. It's everybody's. It's not everybody's thing, right? So
right, right. So
we
I will
appreciate.
put a link in the show notes so people
Thank
can
you, Ken.
find the website. So let's say in May of next year, I bump into you and I say, hey, how did that turn out? Was it a success? And you're going to say yes or no based on what criteria? In your mind, obviously, we want to get you safely and get you back, and
Right.
and hopefully
Right.
you can
I am
balance your
of the
use.
concept. I am of the concept that there's still stories in the mountaineering world that there were people who reached Mount Everest, but they perished on the way back.
Right,
Yeah.
It is very unfortunate, but that's not a successful, not successfully reaching the top. So it's tragic, and we don't want any accident. So obviously we want everybody to come back without a scratch. I'm actually more concerned of the scratches that we may suffer, or we may get from just touching the rocks with plenty of
yeah,
seashells and things like that. But now in terms of the expedition itself, I guess to be successful, we have, as I said, they're probably about, I would say about 4,000, maybe 35 to 4,000 um, very passionate chasers who I think that would perhaps postpone you know, depending where they are on the face of the planet, they may postpone a holiday, they may take a day off from work, or maybe a few hours if this is the only time when they can get us for such an operation. Okay, so in my opinion, we have to make. I don't know if all of them will end up in the log. Some people maybe, or have plans that cannot be changed, obviously. But I would hope that to be successful, we should have about 4,000 unique stations and probably, I don't know, 8, 10,000 contacts in that range.
Okay.
Uh, it's possible that, the number of contacts, well, based on my personal experience, if if we want to push the number of contacts too high, we will end up, unfortunately, with a larger number of contacts in, like a significantly larger number of contacts in FT8.
Yeah, you can't get rid of
And
that.
that's probably not necessarily a good thing. Why? Because in this strange IOTA world, there are a lot of guys who, for one reason or another, don't like FT8, and they do not operate FT8. They not consider FT8 as a. Let's not go there. But
No,
they
no.
don't consider FT8 I don't know,
A viable mode, for instance.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, for me, it's just another language, and if I can get around in English, I may have to switch to something else, and eventually I will switch to FT8. You see.
Yeah.
So in CW, I used to love CW originally because the pileups were not quite as crazy in SSB. And some guys think that CW, well, that's the pinnacle. This is the most. No, the most difficult is still an SSB, a good old SSB pileup. That is the most difficult to crack. You get about a third of that of those guys in the CW pileup. So it's gotta be easy. Come on, you know. Uh, yeah, yeah, but again, it's another language. If I can, I'll do whatever I have to in order to get that contact with Papa Five.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, sorry about this. Going back,
No.
I think that perhaps um, you know 8, 9,000, something like that, 10,000. If we can stay longer, sure, longer, more. Felipe, maybe I shouldn't say this, but Felipe says no, no, no. We have to do 15,000 contacts. Well, I don't know. We'll have to see. If people are calling and there's pileup, then we'll do. Uh, but usually for aorta operations, 2, 3 days, the pileup, a couple of days, maybe 2, 3 days. Well, the pileups are pretty fierce. After that, they kind of subside. So, for example, I know from past experience that I worked maybe 13, 14, 1,500 stations in one day, but that was early.
Right.
Later on, they might be just 800 or maybe less, 600. So, now if you run just FT8, or if you really want to score big on the QSOs, and you run FT8, you're always going to find someone in FT8. They'll take you on all modes, or all bands, and
Yep.
so I don't think that that's now the issue though is that in the end it's not what I think about an expedition. It's not what I think. If I come back, if my team comes back and we are safe and sound, and we put up this number of contacts, for us there will be a great operation.
Right.
But it's not great until the chasers consider that it's great.
Yes.
So this will have to be, the forums will be talking, and if they say, well, I mean, it's great, good operation. I made it, it's up to them. They have to the DXs. They have to decide whether this is
Yes.
great or not. For
You know,
us,
that is true. The only problem with that is there's so many guys that, and we know this because we do the DXpedition of the year, right? And so
Yes.
when we talk to people, there's too many people that evaluated the expedition on whether they got them in the log or not. And that's not, I mean, if that's your criteria, that's fine. But to me, there's a lot more that goes into it than whether you got in my log or not. You know, if it was that easy that I could work you, maybe it wasn't a great DXpedition. Yeah.
I think there's some logic and some right in that. Though it's yeah, I think that ultimately um, the guys kind I mean the extras they kind of want to have a fair chance
Sure.
at working you, okay? If you show up throughout the day at proper times, which kind of is proof that you have an idea of the propagation and you study the propagation and they know that you're going to change to this band or that band because that's good for them and then I think that they'll appreciate that. They maybe I don't know about this one in particular, but they have been situations when I know there were half an hour, within half an hour there was a chance of working some stations in Australia from Nunavut or not. And you know, well, I was listening for them, and I just noticed that at some point the Japanese were just gone. And that's when I thought that I should be calling for. Well, I knew I had I had the propagation forecast. I knew it. I had some papers, some tables, and I was calling in, and the VKs came. So and then you get the answers from them how fabulous this operation was because a few guys from Australia managed to contact that particular activity. I think it's in the eyes of the beholder in the
Yeah,
end.
it really is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a. But it's for we have to have our own evaluation, and for us, I also look, for example, if there's guys who have provided some donations, some financial support. Well, we don't stand by everyone to look for them. Uh, but we should be able to track, the propagation and different parts of the world to be able to work them. And, if we work all of them except a couple, well, that's perhaps also reasonably good.
Yes.
I'd love to work them all.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And it happened, but not always. Okay, so yeah, so there are many ways to evaluate this, but I wouldn't be surprised if the activators have some criteria, the extras have some other criteria, and those who are part of the committees who decide on, as you said, which is going to get a particular distinction, they
Right.
have some different criteria. It's fine. And it's part of the fun.
Yeah. So we've had numerous people on, and we always ask them that question: how will you determine? And we asked Adrian, KO8 SCA, who was on before Bouvet, and his answer was so different than everybody else's. He said, if we get there safe and we get back safe, and we did the best we can with what we can at the time we did it, I have to consider it to be successul. And I thought,
Um,
Yeah.
that's really that sums it
Yeah,
up. I mean,
Adrian is it's not only that we're both born and raised in Romania, but he's a very good friend of mine. And so it happens that we live relatively close, about 3 hours driving. So it's several times a year we have a chance to meet and our families meet and so on and so forth. I think that so this was his answer before
before,
Bouvet.
yep,
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if this would be his answer today. I mean, after Bouvet,
right,
because we in Bouvet 23 we had a certain well the team leaders had a certain decision to make at some point, and I it's I was in their shoes. I can't speak for them, but the idea of hanging in there for a little longer just to bring a couple more stations or maybe some amplifiers and some generator or some generators seems to me like quite an obvious decision, and we didn't take it. See, when we landed on Bouvet in 23, Um, After a number of people kind of wander around for about 4 days, three nights, and yeah, it was an unfortunate series of events that led to that. But then, they came back to the boat, and we sat and discussed, and the guide told us that there's a plan. He has a plan how to take us there. But he won't take us unless there would be minimum 6 people who are willing to go. Why? Because he knew, based on his evaluation, and that we need so many people to put this, so many people to do that, so many people to do this. So if you don't have a critical mass, then you won't do it, or he's not going to do it. Okay,
Okay.
not yeah. And the number was 6, right? At no point in time, even when the team leaders decided to poll the team, see, hey, do you want to stay? Do you want to go? What was the choice? Right? And I'm not criticizing them for doing this. It was their decision at the time, based on everything that they thought that was, necessary to do. But we were 6. So we were within the numbers established by who wanted to continue for a few more days. Who we were within the numbers established by the guide, and so that was the condition in the first place. Not to mention that in us going to the island, it was always a proof of concept. So this landing and setting up camp, and was supposed to be a proof of concept. If this one works, then we go to the phase 2, which is we bring additional. We're not going to bring all the equipment, because by then we realize that this is not going to happen. But we beef it up a little bit. We get a little more juice, and some power, some antennas, and we just going to hang in there for a little longer. So it was a different decision, and in the end, I'm sure that the team leaders had to, they decided they made the best decision they could possibly get under the circumstances. This doesn't necessarily mean that I was happy with the circumstances and the result. One of the elements there that I personally didn't. Didn't favor at all. And it's kind of thinking of this that I doubt that Adrian would say the same, that that he might have said before Bouvet, was that at some point in our stay on the island, there was a little bit of a frustration as to and because we could have done more, should have done more, we could do more if we bring more equipment. There's the planning of staying a little longer, and so on and so forth. And at some point, somebody, I'm not going to go into the names now, said these things. Well, guys, listen, we did the best we could. If anybody wants more, they should come. If everyone wants to do more, well, they should come. Well, you see, that was not the deal. We got $450,000 worth of support from the community, from individuals, from people who are ecstatic, from major groups, from little groups, from any groups, whatever. And we didn't tell them we're going there and we do everything that we can, and if not, well, somebody else will have to pick it up from that. So to me, that is some kind of a responsibility that you have. We made this deal, and I think that it's more than well, nobody asked us to die on Bouvet, and we were not prepared to do so, by the way. But there's a big difference between that and trying to be a little more responsible of the fact that your trip there has been seriously funded by the community. Okay, just to put this in comparison, and I hope that my my colleagues in the leadership group of Bouvet and the guys, the rest of the team, won't criticize me if they hear this message or not for making this public. And this is not a whining, this is not a complaint or anything like that. But the gist of fact, the gist is that if we do not include in the support, just for the sake of arguments, NCDXF, which provided us with $100,000 then, and they're still thinking a little bit, but they might just provide us with $200,000 now. But we do not include that in this calculation right now. The difference in the support, that financial support, and I'm not talking about the equipment, the manufacturers, I'm not talking about the sponsors, I'm talking about whatever the individuals and the groups they belong to, the amateur radio community provided. The difference between what was provided by the time that we departed from Falklands, from Port Stanley, compared to where we are today, approximately 6 months from departing from Cape Town, it's about 3-1.
Yeah.
So either and I'm not criticizing anyone. It's just the reality that either out of those 18,000 something, let's say 19,000 contacts made by about 18,000 some people, let's say out of the 8,000 people who made those contacts, there were so many for whom this must have been their 340th DXCC, and they said, geez, this is the last one. I'll give these guys, because I'm gonna have them all. This is it. Guys from probably Japan. I think there were very few, if any, who worked Bouvet from Japan before. So it's either that, or the fact that that enthusiasm. I don't know. I'd like to not think of that trust, but there's something that's not there, and I don't know what is the difference.
Right.
But I'd be happy. I'd be very, very keen to know what is that generated this. My hunch at this point in time, or I'm going to be with that, is that perhaps a very large number of those who generously donated, clubs, everyone, back then, was in view of them. For them, Bouvet must have been the last one that they needed, and to have them all.
Well,
if that's not true, and if it's then the only thing that remains is a little bit of I don't know, will they be successful? Will they have what it takes? Well, let's wait and see. And
right.
that was key.
Yeah, so there's a couple points. Number one, I don't want to misrepresent what Adrian said. It wasn't just well, here's what I think, and if we don't do it, the heck with it. That's not at all.
No.
My point was I had never even thought about, if we don't get there and back safely, which is exactly what you said, that's a problem. And I remember years ago, it was Luis, right, who came back from a DXpedition, literally all the way back, set foot in the hotel and died of a heart attack. So that was horrible situation.
Here you go.
Right?
Yeah, no, yeah.
So,
you can't have that and call yourself running a successful
right.
project. Unfortunately, it's just not. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to misrepresent. He was just being honest, and the answer was a simple question, and I appreciate.
I know. Adrian is a very straightforward guy.
Yes.
I sometimes like to think of things a little more from different angles, and keep in mind, this is 3 years down the road.
Yes. But what you said earlier, and it might have been before we started recording, is also true. There's so much riding on Bouvet to the success of Peter the First, because a lot of us are looking at Bouvet saying, okay, it's kind of the same guys doing, it's different, but it's the same guys, and then it'll be the same guys to Peter the First, or a basic group, right?
Yeah, I think it's a little more than that, which is probably what energizes us. Well, at least many of us, if not all of us,
right.
is that if nowadays to carry out such an operation, you have to think of putting together some logistics and some financials on the order of, well, $1.7 million. Um, well, that's a hell of a lot of money if you ask
Yes,
me.
it is.
Okay. And so the question is that um, well, can we do it? Can we actually do it? Can we do something decent for that money? Because if not, well, we may just have to scale it down to just go with the RIBs, with with the radio in a box, plant a couple of guys there, and then let them stay for 3 months or so. Uh, it might just be easier. You have a couple of athletes; they don't even need to be operators. Well, they have to have some technical knowledge, which is fine, but for whatever's worth it, you may not even operate. Who knows? I mean, I'm just throwing things out there.
Right.
So, or have 3, 4 people who can stay much longer, and they could go with different types of boats. They don't need helicopters, and maybe half of them, like 2 guys or 3 guys, are just super, adventure type individuals. They're not technicians, but one is very good, and that's good enough. I don't know. So I think to some extent maybe the future of such massive um, projects with such huge budgets is at stake. Either we perform and we prove that this is not, well, it's a difficult project. It's financially draining, draining on everyone, but
Yes, yes.
but it's feasible. The guys
Yeah.
can do it. They have what it takes, and they can do it. But see, unfortunately, there's a mix of there's a mixture here, because you could have people who are better at taking at dealing with these remote areas, with cold, with wind, with adventures, and so on and so forth. You can definitely have. I mean, they are extreme athletes who do this, but they don't have an interest for amateur radio. They definitely don't have the technical skills that some of these guys have, and they have
Right.
no interest in being there for weeks on a row.
No,
They
that's right.
just go there for, they've been there maybe for a few days, and they have fun, and that's it. Um, so you need some of that, but you also need the operators. You need some guys who have sufficient skills to be able to mend those stations with enough, you don't want the DX says, oh, okay, my God, I mean, I'm gonna wait. Everybody has to have this feeling that they have a good chance at
Yes.
logging us.
That
And
that's
and
that is
don't
true.
go fast enough. That's gonna be, that's gonna be they're gonna be upset, and they say, well, now I'm gonna make noise, and I'm gonna do this DQRM, and so
Yeah.
I think that I am of the opinion, as you said, that the success will have to come with all of us being back safe and sound, and hopefully with a log that is, I'm not going to give any numbers,
No, no.
but with a log that would be substantially better than, not better, but substantially full, or substantially, uh, higher in numbers than what was done before. Now, currently, Bouvet is at number 10. Well, I think if you ask every single guy who is in that team, will tell you they'd like to throw it under the 20 or further down, preferably.
Yeah.
Can we do that? I don't know. Because that doesn't really depend on the operators. That it doesn't depend on the operators. That actually depends on the DXers. But uh, yeah, we gotta hope. So I mean, I think that yeah. So everybody in the team wants to be back safe. Wants the
Sure.
entire team to be back safe and sound. I can tell you, we discussed this. This is criteria number one. criteria number two, we want to do something there's a feeling that we will do something that, if you want to put it this way, it's going to be for the history books. This is going to be the expedition to be matched. Now, it might be matched and overpassed by Peter One, but let's do this one first.
Yes, that's right.
One at a time. I don't know what happened. Peter One,
Yeah.
let's push it, move the post.
Yeah,
I don't want to have it. Yeah. So we're not banking on that.
Okay, so you have a project, and we'll touch on this because we're hitting 2 hours and we're getting past Joe's bedtime. But but you have a project coming up in India, pretty much when you get back. So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So there's some favorable there's a favorable opportunity there to activate another new IOTA reference, which is the last group of islands in India. So we work this island. Well, this group of island includes islands which are administered by the state of Andhra Pradesh. It's a very large state in India, and unfortunately, there was only one counter, which was called Pillar Rock. Pillar Rock, it's a vertical rock, which almost looks like with a little bit of imagination, like a sail. It's about 5 by perhaps 8, 9 meters at the base. But like a sail, it seems to be overhanging and to have an overhang. And we actually, I was there last year and I tried to take some photos, but then Sarat, our good friend, my good friend Sarat, VE3LYC, he went past January and did some with a professional who did ran a drone and took some clips and images and photos and whatever. And the locals confirmed that overhang, it's kind of dangerous. So the idea of installing something there and operating from a rock that is, so meters by so many meters, and it was probably not what IOTA was supposed to be all about.
Okay.
Now, so it happened that looking at more maps and more things, we found another possible counter, which materialized later on, and it has all the conditions to be a counter. And Pillar Rock disappeared. The outer management, I was in potential conflict of interest, so I wasn't part of the decision. I wasn't involved in making any decision regarding that. So right now there's a unique counter called Hope Island. Hope
Okay.
Island. Hope, like having a hope to be on the air. We're trying to do this. Sarat has some other IOTA activities in mind later this year, and if I remember, my understanding is correct, he's planning with a large international group to travel and operate from VU7 in January. So there's a window of opportunity to do this in end of September and early October, and I grabbed it, and that's the rest is so it's going to be the same team who operated from Kanika last year in December, AU to Kilo, Alpha Uniform to Kilo, and from Sagar Island, Alpha Uniform to Sierra. And again, it's going to be 5 days, 5 full days. But the island is a little bit further away from mainland, about 5 kilometers. So the probability of interference from the nearby harbor, which is very large, is much more reduced. The harbor is still 5, 6 kilometers away. And there's no electrical grid on the island. So, for what it was worth it,
Yeah.
we seem to be in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had Sareth on a podcast a few months ago, and he was terrific. He's so
Yeah.
accomplished, and what
Jared is a super enthusiastic
Yes.
guy. He's very young. I think he's 50, 51. And he's a very ambitious in the meantime, he's a very ambitious guy. And as you know, he might have told you then he operated his first operations with guys like Frank, Delta Lima 4, Kilo Quebec must have been 2000. So that's like he was 25 then.
yeah, yeah. He,
He was a very, very young fellow, and but he's extremely enthusiastic. He's very poised. Amateur radio is part of his life, and personally, I'm delighted that he decided to take this baton of activating islands. Pi, unfortunately, VO2PAI, he passed away a while back, but he activated some of these most difficult groups,
okay,
and they haven't been on the air for ages. And so Sarat has let's say, a general vision, a general plan that within let's say 4, maybe 5, but he really would like 4 years to activate all the IOTA groups around India, and eventually either him or through friends to make it so that every 5 years they're on the air. So far, he activated, I think, last year one of these groups, which hasn't been on the air for 20 years.
yeah,
Just well, this is the issue. Some of the islands which are part of this program, I mean, some of the groups which are part of the IOTA program, either financially or because of permits, different organization that administers, conservation areas or whatever other reasons, or sometimes the military, naval issues that, you can't really get a permit, would come on the air ever so rare. But sometimes this happens not because of either money or because of, let's say, these different authorities that are not keen to give you a permit.
yeah,
Sometimes it happens just because doesn't happen to be that interest in the local community, and this is in the local amateur radio community, and this is what definitely Sarat has been working very hard to change. What I know more, I don't want to get into his.
that's okay.
He
Yeah,
might have told you this already, but he's been actively pursuing a while he's not the official, he has no official capacity, but he through the amateur radio groups, he pursued the officials at the licensing authority in India, let's say, to modernize and to bring it along with the rest of the organizations in the world, and that's a big step for India, and he's done a fantastic job. I mean, it's not known that much, but if, for example, I was able to apply and get the license in, I don't know, maybe less than 2 weeks.
wow,
Then I reapplied for extending my license with a new visa, because I need a visa to go to travel
sure,
to India, and it took me, I don't know, maybe, and again, less than 2 weeks. That's in great part not just because he supported me to do that, but because he took steps long time ago, over the many last years, to bring to the attention of the Indian authorities, or the Indian people who are in charge, why it is necessary to do this, why it would be beneficial for the Indian community if they do that, and that's something that not everybody can do in India.
Yeah.
So
I think with all of his accomplishments, what impressed me is that he has 63 other family members that are licensed. I just couldn't believe it. They hold the Guinness Book of Records or something, right? So
Well, he's definitely he's Balotti's nephew, and uh, you know, she was the one who is, I'm sure that you guys remember, she was in View 4 when the big earthquake, Sumatra earthquake that killed, well, the tsunami associated to it killed, I don't know, about 250, 270,000 people
yeah,
around the Indian Ocean. And she was the one who operated from View 4 and View 7 when View 4 and View 7 would be operating,
yeah,
I don't know, once in a blue moon. Uh, so he steps into her. I had the opportunity to meet with her on Zoom because she's in a different part of India. She's a very, very nice lady, and um, you know, there's clearly a generational, a big generational difference between them, and yeah, he's more the guy who would like who would push everyone, well, who would push the hams in India to excel. And for him, you know, amateur radio is not just I don't know how to say, I don't want to be judged wrongly, but a privilege of a few, a
right,
privilege of a few.
right.
He for him, this is something that anybody can enjoy and anybody should enjoy if he wants to do so. And he was interested in um, as I said, modernizing the application process, the way in which, not just for foreigners, even for their own, to make sure that, you know, ascending to different rights of operating different bands, different powers, different things, it's easier and it's not as you know, anchored in the past or anchored into the privilege of a few that I guess it used to be for quite some time. So
Yeah,
he's a great character. He's a very enthusiastic guy, and yeah, I like him very much. He's a
yeah.
good friend.
We had a real good time with him. Joe, did I leave anything out?
No, I think we went through everything very good.
Man, boy.
This has been very exciting.
Oh,
Well, I'm sorry if I overstep my boundaries in some of these chats, but you know, it was meant to be informal, and you know, we took the liberty to discuss a few things which,
absolutely.
you know, they're not necessarily to everyone's liking, but you know, we just express some opinions. It doesn't necessarily mean that we know we don't have the right of a single opinion or the opinion, and you know, people are this. I personally think that amateur radio, it's a very, 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 very large tent, and everyone is welcome. And you know, there are different guys interested in I don't know, 6 meters, and there's some others interested in you know, CW and only CW, and like my very good friend Axel, he would only DL6 KVA, he would only operate CW, but he is a machine.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And there will be guys doing anything under the sun, you know, for just chit-chatting, and uh, you know, as long as I heard that there's some I guess commercial um, uh, groups very interested in taking away some of. I mean, that's been for a long time, but right now it's seems to be something a little more aggressive approach in taking up some of our amateur radio bands, or limiting, restricting some of the amateur radio bands. I'm talking the very, very high ones.
right.
And you know, I don't know much about that. This hasn't been my let's say preoccupation, but I'm sure that some guys are very, very angry about that, and you know, without knowing the problems in great detail, I would be supporting them because you know, I think that we need to enlarge, the areas of whatever we're trying to do, not shrink them, but yeah, it's a big fight.
Yeah, you always have to be careful about setting a precedent because it's hard to walk away once you do that first one, you know?
Oh
Yeah.
man, yeah.
So Cesar,
Yes.
I'll tell you, this was terrific. The time has flown by, and I appreciate your candor. And we wanted to keep it informal, and we always do. So,
Yeah.
man, it's just great. I was so honored to meet you last
I
May,
thank
and
you very, very kindly. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. I hope I didn't upset too many guys. They can send me any complaint they have.
Yeah.
This is almost like for me. This was like talking at either Dayton, Visalia with the guys, not necessarily um, taking care of every single word, and I make
sure,
sure that
Yeah.
the intention is not to hurt anyone. Is to
no.
to promote
That's right. That's
the
right.
hobby that we all love, and I perhaps have my own peculiarities. Being a little bit older, it's I guess comes with it.
Well, there is a project we may ask you to help us with because there's IOTA and there's POTA and there's soda,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Joe and I are trying to start breweries on the air, BOTA.
Oh yeah, there are all sorts of there are tons of things. I still have the belief, it may or may be true, that it kind of all started with IOTA, just because all the other ones are on the air. You
Yes.
don't have a P XCC or something. You don't have the you know but there are all sorts of other fascinating programs. I'm telling you, just one of the fascinating programs. There are many, counties and things, but one of them is called U.S. Islands Award. Okay, now you can say, what's so fascinating about the U.S. Islands Award? Well, the U.S. Islands Award has a word, they give for working islands in all U.S. states. It's kind of like a WAS
Yeah.
islands, right?
Okay.
Um, it took me almost 14 years to chase that one. But I did it. I was number 12.
Oh,
And
Wow.
but this was quite a while back. But the beautiful thing about it is that the manager of the program, I applied for the award, and the conditions are, they have to check and things, and then they tell you, and this is that. But they didn't tell me anything. They just sent me a beautiful um, award, all framed in a beautiful frame. So there are all sorts of perks that sometimes you can get for doing something quite. And by
yeah.
the way, I just learned, I think a few days ago, that, as you know, there's a Fred Fish award for working all, I guess, continental
Oh yeah, Fred
U.S.
Fish. Yep.
grids on 6 meters. I knew there was the number of guys who've done it. Well, I'm still quite far from that, but I'm just, there've been already 61 people. The 61st was just received his thing now. So again, this is just a few of the things that I was somehow attracted to, but how many others are that I don't even know about, and you know, uh, all sorts of other people are attracted to. So as I said, it's a very, very large tent. I'm sure that there are interesting things, and everyone who's been at it for, well, kind of a long time
Yeah.
would have stories and stories to tell. And thank you very, very much for giving me this exceptional opportunity. I hope that your listeners did enjoy some of it at least.
I'm sure they
And
will.
I cannot thank you more for everything that you guys do for this absolutely fantastic hobby.
Well,
Well, thank you very much, and it's certainly been a pleasure. And it's always nice to see you at Dayton. And I didn't realize we have known one another since 2009.
Yes, I think the first
Yeah.
time we met was 2009. I was there at I remember that I sat at the DX dinner, and I didn't know where to sit. I just sat at a table, and just across from me was was Craig K9CT.
oh
I
yeah.
didn't
Yeah,
know much
really.
about him. I mean, I knew of him, but I didn't
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
didn't know anybody. And and he asked me, "Hey, what you do?" Yeah. I said,
Sure.
"Well, I knew that he wore the shirt of some big expedition that received that year the Expedition of the Year award, whatever that was."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, it's kind of some islands. This program, Islands on the Air. I'd like to chase them." And I said, "Yeah, there's one of your compatriots has been lost in the Arctic. There's this island, whatever. That was the East Pan Island where I was lost in winter."
Yeah.
And they said, "Yeah, I know about him. I'm him." I said, "No, yes, I'm no." And then he turned to Dave, WD5 COV, and said, "Dave, this
Yeah.
is the guy we've been talking about when we sat down at this table." And that's when I told him that I don't think that I will ever have as much fun as I had at that particular dinner coming to Dayton. I told him I could come to Dayton probably 20 times, and I don't think that anything will ever surpass this.
Yeah.
And I try to make this kind of when I received this fantastic honor from the induction into the CQDX Hall of Fame. I said that I believe it. Well, I just can't believe that it was something that surpassed the
Yeah.
moment of
Yeah.
2009 when Craig and I sat down and he told me that. I told him, "Yeah, I know him. I'm the guy." It's like,
Yeah.
can you imagine that? So,
Wow.
it
Yeah.
Very
was
cool.
Craig
the
is a super, super guy. I know him well. I've been on several trips with him. Yeah. He's good. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Yep. Thank you and
Bless you
safe
guys.
travels.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
so much, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm sure that many people, uh, many interesting. You'll bring all sorts of guys of interesting people who had, I guess in their own way, unique experiences, and sharing them with your listeners will eventually contribute to triggering one of them. Say, I
Right.
can do that, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it better.
Yes, that's
I'm
right.
gonna do it better than him. I'm gonna do it better than her. I'm just gonna be the guy that I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what we want.
Yes. Exactly.
100%. That's right. Everything safe travels to you, and I may get a hold of you in the middle of September. We can get back together and talk how the trip went, and then talk about your Indian trip coming up, and get an update on Bouvet also. So,
Yes,
don't
I
miss it.
will travel to Bouvet to Oslo for the final, the final touches on the container. That we have to code every single component and to put them together in ways in which they will be easier to retrieve them and to transfer them based on a logistical plan that we have. Retrieve them and transfer them to the island based on the logistical plan that we have. So I will travel to Oslo between September 11 and 15.
Okay.
I'll be back at home on the 15th. And then on the 24th, I'm leaving for India, and I'll be back, if everything goes well, October 4th.
Okay. I may try to pin you down on the 17th or 18th for just a half hour, I promise.
I will be only pleased. Yeah, anything we can do to focus everyone's attention to Bouvet. We need their attention. We need their support. And if they're not willing to contribute to supporting us ahead of the operation, well, that's ultimately we'll have to deal with that. We want them in the pilots,
Right, right.
and we want to work all of them.
Yeah, we'll do our best, that's for sure.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very,
Safe
very much.
travels.
Have a
Yes.
great weekend,
You too,
Yes.
sir.
Have a
Thank you
good
so
night.
much.
Thank
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Joe.
Bye for now. Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you found that as fascinating as I did. I really, really enjoyed that. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the DX Mentor. I would like to thank our sponsors, ICOM America, the Daily DX, DX Engineering, and the Southwest Ohio DX Association. You won't find anyone more committed to DX than these sponsors. I would also like to thank our guests today, Cezar, VE3LYC, and Joe, WAGEX. I would love to have your feedback, answer your questions, and provide help with any DX or amateur radio issues that you may have. If you need clarification on something or you just have a question, email me at thedxmentor@gmail.com. I would especially like to thank you, our listeners and viewers. Without you, there would be no reason to do this. Please drop me a line if you've achieved an all-time new one, received recognition, or have a DX event that you would like us to mention. We would be happy to do that. If you're enjoying these DX Mentor episodes, please hit the subscribe button. If you want to follow us to get updates on future YouTube and podcast episodes, as well as DX events and DXpeditions, join the DX Mentor Facebook group. 7-3 for this episode, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support. I hope to see you in the pile-ups.